For years, there was a simple rule in the car industry. If you wanted to sell a car, you had to offer Apple CarPlay. Ford, Toyota, BMW, Mercedes, almost every single one, except Tesla. And when you ask Tesla owners why, most of them will give you some version of the same answer. Tesla's system is just better. But here's the thing. That's not an explanation. That's an excuse. Because the real reason Tesla refuses to add CarPlay has almost nothing to do with user experience. It has everything to do with control, with data, and with a silent war between two of the most powerful companies on the planet, a war that most people don't even know is happening. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why Tesla will never add CarPlay. But more than that, you're going to see how this one feature, this seemingly small software decision, reveals the entire future of the automobile industry. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with what most people assume. Tesla doesn't add CarPlay because their infotainment system is already excellent. The massive touchscreen, the responsive interface, the constant over-the-air updates. It feels modern, it feels integrated, it works. So why add a third-party layer on top of that? This explanation makes sense on a surface level. However, Tesla is a software company that happens to make cars. They've invested heavily in their interface. Adding CarPlay would essentially mean admitting that Apple does software better than they do. And for a company led by Elon Musk, a man who once called Apple the Tesla graveyard because of how many ex-Tesla employees they'd poached, that admission isn't happening. Because this explanation assumes that Tesla's resistance to CarPlay is about pride, about ego, about the aesthetics of control. But there's a problem with that theory. Pride doesn't explain why Tesla actively lobbied against right-to-repair laws. Pride doesn't explain why Tesla collects massive amounts of driver data. Something else is going on here, something that has nothing to do with how pretty a touchscreen looks. To understand what Tesla is actually protecting, you need to understand how Apple CarPlay works, not from a user's perspective, but from a data perspective. When you plug your iPhone into a car with CarPlay, something interesting happens. The car's screen essentially becomes a mirror for your phone. Your apps, your maps, your music, your messages. But here's the critical detail. All of that data stays on your phone. Apple routes your navigation through Apple Maps or Google Maps on your device. Your Spotify streams through your phone's connection. Your messages are processed by Apple servers. The car becomes a dumb terminal, a screen and some speakers. It doesn't know where you're going. It doesn't know what you're listening to. It doesn't know who you're texting. And for most automakers, this trade-off is acceptable. They get to offer a feature consumers want, and in exchange, they give up data they weren't using anyway. But Tesla is not like most automakers. However, here's where things start to get interesting. Tesla's business model is fundamentally different from every traditional car company. Ford makes money selling you a car. Toyota makes money selling you reliability. BMW sells you status. Tesla sells you a car, but that's just the beginning. Tesla makes money on software upgrades, on subscription services, on full self-driving packages that can cost over $15,000, on supercharger networks, on insurance products based on your driving behavior. And every single one of those revenue streams depends on one thing: data. Tesla's cars are data collection machines. They know how fast you accelerate, how hard you brake, how often you check your mirrors, whether you're paying attention to the road, where you drive, when you drive, how long you sit in traffic. This data does two things. First, it trains Tesla's full self-driving AI. Every mile driven by every Tesla owner feeds into the neural network that powers Tesla's autonomous driving ambitions. This is why Tesla doesn't need to pay for a fleet of test vehicles like Waymo does. Every customer is a test driver. Every trip is training data. Second, this data lets Tesla build products on top of your behavior. Tesla Insurance, for example, prices your premium based on your safety score, a number calculated in real time from how you actually drive. Now think about what would happen if Tesla added CarPlay. Suddenly, a significant portion of their customers would stop using Tesla's navigation. They'd open Apple Maps or Google Maps instead. which means Tesla would lose access to routing data, destination data, traffic prediction data. All of it would flow to Apple instead. But this isn't just about Tesla protecting its data, it's about Tesla protecting itself from Apple. Because Apple wasn't just making phones and headphones, Apple was building a car. Project Titan, Apple's secret automotive division, started in 2014, staffed with over 1,000 engineers at its peak. Apple spent an estimated $10 billion on this project before officially canceling it in early 2024. And here's what most people don't realize. During those 10 years, Apple was poaching engineers from Tesla at an alarming rate. Entire teams would leave Palo Alto for Cupertino. Battery engineers, autopilot specialists, interior designers. Elon Musk was furious. He publicly called Apple the Tesla graveyard and reportedly said that Apple only hires people who couldn't make it at Tesla. But behind the trash talk, something more calculated was happening. Elon Musk understood that Apple wasn't just trying to build a car. Apple was trying to own the in-car experience, the same way they owned the Pocket with the iPhone. CarPlay was phase one. And when CarPlay launched in 2014, it was a convenience feature. Plug in your phone, see your apps on the screen. Simple. But in 2022, Apple announced something different. The next generation of CarPlay wouldn't just mirror your apps. It would take over your entire dashboard, every instrument cluster in your car rendered by Apple software, controlled by Apple design, running on Apple's operating system. In other words, Apple was no longer content to be a passenger. Apple wanted to be the driver. And car manufacturers were lining up to hand over the keys. Mercedes signed on, Porsche signed on, Land Rover, Audi, Honda, Ford, all of them announced support for this new CarPlay experience. All of them, except Tesla. Now you're starting to see the real picture. Tesla isn't just protecting its data. Tesla is protecting its identity. Because here's what happens if Tesla adds CarPlay. They become a hardware company. Think about what that means. If customers start using Apple for navigation, music, messaging, or climate control, then what is Tesla? Tesla becomes a battery and four wheels, a manufacturing company. And in that world, Tesla's competitive advantage disappears because Apple has already proven decade after decade that they can build software ecosystems that lock users in forever. The iPhone proved it. The App Store proved it. Apple Music, Apple TV, and iCloud. Once Apple owns the car dashboard, they own the car customer. And Tesla knows, they know with absolute certainty that they cannot win a software ecosystem war against Apple. Not in the long run. Not when Apple has 2 billion active devices feeding into their services. So Tesla's only move is to refuse. But this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because Apple's car project failed in 2024. The engineers were reassigned to AI projects. The dream of an Apple car died. And you might think, okay, so Tesla won. The threat is over. Maybe now they'll add CarPlay. But that's not what happened. Instead, Tesla doubled down. They've made their system even more proprietary. They've expanded their data collection. They've increased the integration between the car and Tesla's broader ecosystem. They did this because Tesla learned something from Apple's failure, something that most analysts completely missed. Apple didn't cancel Project Titan because building a car was too hard. Apple canceled it because they realized they didn't need to. Think about what Apple already controls. Billions of users locked into their ecosystem. Now think about what the next generation of CarPlay offers. Full dashboard integration, instrument cluster control, climate systems, vehicle settings. Apple doesn't need to build a car. Apple just needs to build the software that runs inside everyone else's car. And that's exactly what they're doing. This is where the war starts, because Tesla and Apple are both fighting for the same thing, to be the platform layer of the automobile. Ford, Toyota, BMW, they've already conceded this fight. They've accepted that they're hardware companies. They'll build the metal and Apple will provide the soul. But Tesla refuses to accept that future. However, there's a complication Tesla didn't anticipate. Customers started to revolt. Survey after survey shows the same result. lack of CarPlay support is one of the top complaints among Tesla owners, which puts Tesla in an impossible position. If they add CarPlay, they lose strategic control over their customers' data and in-car experience. They take the first step toward becoming a commodity hardware company. If they don't add CarPlay, they alienate a growing portion of potential customers who see this as a deal breaker. And the longer they wait, the more entrenched Apple becomes in every other vehicle on the road. This explains something that confused a lot of analysts. Why has Tesla been aggressively cutting prices? It's because Tesla is racing against time. Every Tesla they sell today is another customer inside Tesla's ecosystem, another data source, another driver training their full self-driving AI, another user who might subscribe to Tesla Premium Connectivity, Tesla Insurance, Tesla Supercharging. But if those customers defect to brands that offer CarPlay, then Tesla loses them forever. The price cuts aren't desperation. They're trying to lock in as many customers as possible before the next generation CarPlay turns every competitor's vehicle into an Apple product. And here's the thing no one is talking about. The first vehicles with full next-generation CarPlay integration are hitting the market. If the reviews for the new Porsche or Aston Martin integration are transformative, the gap that Tesla has maintained, that lead in software experience, will collapse. Because Apple didn't just copy what Tesla was doing, Apple did what Apple always does. They waited until the technology matured, then they made it inevitable. Every car that ships with next-gen CarPlay is a car that feels like an Apple product. And for millions of consumers, that's not a downside, that's the entire selling point. So, where does this leave Tesla? They're betting everything on one thing: full self-driving. Think about it. If Tesla can actually deliver a fully autonomous vehicle, a car that drives itself so reliably that you can sleep in the back seat, then CarPlay becomes irrelevant. You're not going to be staring at the dashboard. You're not going to be managing navigation. You're going to be watching Netflix or taking a nap. And in that future, Tesla's data advantage becomes insurmountable because they'll have billions of miles of training data that no one else can match. And that's the hidden truth behind Tesla and Apple CarPlay. It's not about a feature, it's about who owns the future of transportation. Two companies, two visions. Tesla is betting that you'll choose their ecosystem. Apple is betting that you're already so deeply embedded in their world that no car company can compete. And the strangest part, both of them might be right. But the customers who need Apple, they're not coming to Tesla. That simple toggle, connect to CarPlay, is the line being drawn. And your next car purchase? That's the vote you're casting.